All right, Kev, teach us.
Okay, so going back to Parshat Rei, something that we didn't discuss, two other halachas which are mentioned in this parsha. So the one is not to add to the commandments or the mitzvot. Like unfortunately, there are some sects or
That is the one.
streams that do that. So we're not allowed to add or change mitzvah structure, we're thinking that we will improve it by adding to it. Good. Um, a practical example of that could be somebody who thinks they're extremely from, and we know people, such people, and they add an extra tzitzit string to their tzitzit because they think it'll make them holier when they're not supposed to do such a thing. Then another example, another halacha is um, causing other people to eat tray food. Let's say you are a host and you have people for dinner on Shabbos, but you have a tray pot and you don't tell them. You shouldn't do that because that's also putting a stumbling block before the blind. They don't know, but you shouldn't do such a thing because we have to abide by the laws of kashrut and eat kosher food, meat that's been properly shechted and proper ingredients used for other types of food that is allowed to us.
Good. I like the fact, Kevin, that every day we start with halachas, so you come out with something tangible in the shir instead of just Gemara theory. So that makes sense. All right, let me get
Well, it's
straight
both. We come
into
out with
it.
both. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's important. So obviously we learned this issue in the eighth daf. We on 8A3, and it was this consideration. How it started is Rava turned around and said this word for asher, and what its implication is that if you want to enter the forest, you can. You don't want to enter, you can refrain. So it's not obligatory. It's optional, and therefore, because it's optional, it's not a mitzvah obligation, and we can see from there that chopping wood for a sukkah or a korban for an altar, that's not obligatory because you can get to buy the wood. And kind of Rava would think like, why take the risk of possibly killing somebody? Because it's easier just to buy the wood and pay a few shekels or whatever the case may be, and don't put yourself under any sort of stress. Because there's one thing, the preparation of a mitzvah is not necessarily a mitzvah. And this was the whole argument with regards to chastising your son. The mitzvah is education of your son or your pupil. It's not the corporal punishment aspect, according to um, certain opinions, especially according to Ravina. According to Rava, yes, it's absolutely essential because it's a wonderful motivational tool. And the initial suggestion is, well, what if he's a good boy? And it says, listen, you still have to chastise him because you're going to get more out of him because you can't expect one caning to last an entire high school career. So with this voluntary, involuntary stuff, and he's saying, listen, he says to Ravina, I can give you all the logic in the world that it's a preparation to a mitzvah and this and that, but the very fact that it uses the word asher is indicating it's an optional, and therefore, since it's a voluntary act, it's not a mitzvah-based act, and that's my very, very proof. So we have this issue of Rav Ada by Ahavah, and he turns around and says to Rava, well, Rava, if that's your particular opinion, then it uses the word asher in other cases. What's this word? Well, if you look at Bamidbar, and you see that you're dealing with if you remember the pasuk, it's chapter 19, verse 20, and chapter 19, verse 13. And I showed it to you yesterday on Safari Chumash. It uses the word asher twice in both different contexts of the verse. And it says, whoever touches the corpse of a human being who dies and does not purify himself has contaminated the tabernacle of Hashem, and that shall be cut off from Israel, meaning spiritual kares, excision. And for the purification waters have not been thrown on him, he shall be tameh, his tameh is yet with him. And that's in Bamidbar, Numbers, chapter 19, verse 13, verse 20. But the both of the word asher. So Rav Ada Ahavah is turning around and says the word asher there is talking about, if you want to rather talk that it's voluntary, I can tell you that even a Kohen Gadol, if he stumbles upon an abandoned corpse, he has to bury it. And therefore, it's not voluntary, it's mandatory. And you want to say, Rava, that there might be certain forms of tumah that you can choose to be tumah, or you can choose not to be tumah or in tameh. Okay? And at the moment, Lance and Gavin have both got this issue of this internet connectivity, another wonderful South African product from Vumatel. And I'm having this sort of thing, but at least we've got water and electricity. So we thank God for the blessings in South Africa. So anyway, let's just get back to it. So the bottom line of it is, accordingly, it would seem to have the point that you can become tamei or not. And we discussed activities yesterday with the Zava, for example, where a Zava, if she has certain types of foods, or she partakes in certain sorts of exercises, then that would bring about a a flow from a vaginal area, which would put her in a state of tame. With a guy, he could get aroused, think of weird things, or even masturbate, which is definitely not recommended by the Torah. And it mentions it straight. I showed you in Nida 41, I mentioned all these things. And then a guy then voluntarily becomes tumah. Somebody could decide that their cat brought in a dead rat. I did, and I picked it up by the tail and I threw it outside. I wasn't even thinking share it, Tuma or whatever. Or you want to go and visit a relative at the cemetery because you miss them and you're in that country and your close uncle was buried in that country and you're going to come once every 5 years. People do all sorts of things. So the one thing you have no choice to do is to bury an abandoned corpse. Okay? And therefore, Rav Ada is saying that Rava is obligatory. So what are you using this word? And this word is used asher twice. So what are you coming to say it's voluntary whether you go into a forest or not? It's proving it's mandatory to go in. And then preparing the wood is would be part of the mitzvah should you need it. So then it goes into a case where Gavin Simpson asked a good question. And that question was, well, it might be obligatory to bury an abandoned corpse, but who says it's obligatory to enter the temple? And therefore, because that act is voluntary, since that part is voluntary, of course you're going to get kares. You can't turn around and say because you're going to get kares for entering the temple, that proves that when you're doing a mitzvah, you're not covered, and therefore, if you're doing a mitzvah like chopping wood for a sukkah, you're not covered, and you would go into exile. So Rav has turned around and said, look, let's not talk about something that obvious or that simple, because everybody knows that that voluntary thing you'd be accountable for. That's exactly where you get kares. So because that part is voluntary. So he's saying, why I'm speaking about the word asher is there other voluntary acts that are a little bit more subtle, and people are not aware of it. And one of them is that you have to generally wait until nightfall because there's a vestige of tumah, okay? And it's known as tevel yom, just like your toivel dishes. And because there's some remnants of tumah or vestige of tumah, you have to wait until nightfall because the mikveh that you have during the days does not suffice. And he's saying so that you could think, but then it's even more strict than that. You actually should wait till the next day, because if you say your tumah is yet with him in the pasuk, what it's actually saying is something a little bit more interesting. Is it's using this term to say, look, not even nightfall will help. You actually have to wait until the next day, because if you look at a zava, A Zav is the male version with a seminal emission. A Zava has, as I said, uterine or vaginal fluid, etc. And then because we say that a man's can be from a seminal emission or a woman from eating or exercise, those are voluntary activities, touching a sheretz. Metzora is somebody that gets leprosy. It's leprosy. But why is it voluntary? You chose to spoke Lashon Hara. You chose to have gaiva, arrogance. And therefore, you get leprosy on the skin, but it can also cause genital emissions. Okay? And then the last thing is a woman during a menstrual cycle or perhaps during giving birth. So you can say, well, that's a choice. Yeah, you didn't choose a menstrual cycle, but you chose to have intercourse within marriage, which is allowed. So why would you have to have this mechusa kippurim? Because when you use the word Yom Kippur, it's got this connotation of atonement. So it's saying no. Listen, when you look at uh, um, when you look at this term mechusa kippurim, it's saying that basically that even in a case where it is bodily function and less of a decision, there's a certain atonement in the sense that a person doesn't necessarily become impure because they sinned. So this is where Tama and Tara become very, very complicated. In other words, um, what is so bad about picking up a defiled, a dead rodent or going to a cemetery? You're visiting somebody you love. I mean, it's not as if you did something very, very naughty. So he's saying, and especially let's take the case of a woman giving birth, is that for a daughter, she's in a tame state for 14 days. Why? Because she carried double the holiness. She now gave birth to a Jew and is a vessel for carrying another Jewish life, and now has a daughter that herself, once she comes to maturity, will have another Jewish generation. So it's a double blessing, and therefore, in the absence of her pregnancy, she becomes very ordinary again. And in comparison to that level of kedusha, she's now in a state of tumah. For a male, it's only for 7 days because she has a Jewish baby, but he could marry out. We don't know. So the thing of it is, in comparison to the Kedusha level, there's an atonement because of the drop in level. So it's not an atonement. We've got to see it as almost a purification process. So Rav is turning around and said, I'm going to teach you something more. For Zav, Zava, Metzora, and a woman giving birth, they have to wait till the morning of the immersion, not just a Tuvu Yom till sunset. And then they've got to bring their sacrifices. And if they don't bring their sacrifices, it is not fully atoning in the sense that it doesn't fully remove the vestige of Tumah. And that vestige of Tumah you have to atone for, but at the point where you wait till morning, you can enter the temple before your sacrifices, because guess what? The temple is where you bring your sacrifices. So you've moved enough in the morning in terms of the fact that you can enter, there's no kares, but you still have to get a full purification, um, bring the appropriate sacrifices. So then Rav Ada says, so where do we see this thing of an abandoned course? He said, simple. It uses in the pasuk tame yiyeh od. The word od is redundant. What it's coming to do is adding this case of almost mandatory tuma, where you're burying an abandoned corpse. And so even there, you would think that because it's mandatory, you don't have to go through these processes. And we're saying even if it is mandatory and not selected, you in fact have to go through the same processes of immersion, cleanliness, sacrifices in order not to get kares or Makkos. Okay, guys, I did a summary. I hope that was reasonable.
No, that was very good. And is it all the same sacrifices? Doesn't matter what tumor it is. Doesn't matter which scenario.
Gavin, I don't know. I
No, I'm
actually,
just asking. It's fine.
no, I think that's a
Not a
brilliant
problem.
question. I have no
Uh,
idea.
Damon,
Yeah.
you said that someone who went into the mikveh to become tahor, and they got to wait till nightfall. Nightfall might not suffice. They have to wait. You, Nightfall is the next day. You said they wait so they have to wait for till the following day
Okay, I
or
think
another
Kevin's
few hours.
asking a very good
What does that
question.
actually mean?
Kevin's saying it sounds confusing. Either you have to wait, if you wait till nightfall, it's technically the next day, halachic day. Why would you have to wait till morning? Because it's technically the next day. So there's two concepts, Kev. I think it's a great question. The one question is that there are different levels of tumah. So, for example, touching, you get first degree tumah, second degree, you in a all hell when you touch vessels, there's different degrees. So, waiting until morning, especially those parts of tumah that actually need a sacrifice, there might be some that don't. But certainly those that need a sacrifice, you have to wait till morning because they are at a higher degree of tumah. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's to answer your question. I was also interested. That's why I looked it up.
Okay, yeah. So this depends on the severity of the tumah. If it's less severe, it takes less severe, the less time nightfall is sufficient, basically.
Correct. So let's just go.
Okay, sure.
Let's just go to the next part. Just incidentally, guys, I want to ask you something. Um, Mr. Simpson, what time do you have to go? I know you had to leave early. Guys, I feel like
He's
I'm
on
in
mute.
the
Sorry, just
seance.
putting mutes over here. So just after 7. But carry on, carry on. Like
No,
I
no,
say,
no. So
five past 7.
I tell you what we can do. I'm happy, Shame. Arthur, tomorrow, we want to wish him Mazel Tov because it's his daughter's ceremony for the army, right, Arthur? What is it exactly? I don't know. I know it's something special.
Not tomorrow, next week, Wednesday.
Oh, it's hard to keep up.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. Okay.
Next week.
So,
27th.
so what we're going to do, guys, is I think now that we've done a summary and Lawrence isn't having the best connection, nor is Gavin, and I'm feeling a bit lousy, is I think I'm happy to start. I don't want to get halfway through a subject now and then halfway through that same subject and repeat it tomorrow. It's going to be a complicated one. I've learned it off by heart with Hashem's kindness, and I'll give it tomorrow. But as a summary, I thought this was not bad. I kept it simple.
Yeah, it was a very good summary. Thank you. I'm also not feeling great, so I'm quite happy with this outcome.
It's still
Thank
20 minutes learning, Damon. Still learning. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
It is still learning. I'm sorry I'm not up to 40, but the thing of it is,
No, please. It's
I was feeling shockingly for the sure. I wanted to
it's
lie
quality, not quantity. Yeah.
Yeah. So just thanks all of you, and just have a wonderful evening further. Be well.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Well done. Well
Feel
done.
better, hey?
And
Cheers.
if-
Thank
if
you. Cheers.